Dr. Suzanne. I this instead of give a presentation of my thesis, just let you know, like I'm spending the next week really redrafting English and grammar and stuff that I really was not happy with the thesis. So I don't think if you read it now, it's the best reflection. I'm just currently at the moment. So this will give you just a quick overview. Now, I'm not going to go through every slide. I'm going to skim through some of this stuff, but I used this when I was when I was speaking with Dr. Guy. So bridging theory and practice. So exploring the value adoption of industry and practice-based doctors across sectors by Dr. Michael Murray. As I say, my own background, I am an adjunct professor and I supervise students who are doing practice-based doctorates, particularly PhD by portfolio or DBA. Great interest in, say, emergent practitioner doctorates. Now, this one in the topic, I'm actually only exploring the value perception and adoptions and barriers to adoptions of the EdB and the DBA. So, okay, as we discussed in a call, doctoral education diversifying employers want they want research that solves real world problems. And the other thing is there's a big emergence now with online education and online doctorates, and a lot of them are doing it while they're working. So from my research so far and what I know myself, there's mixed signals about the value and recognition, both by institutions, awarding bodies and employers. But in fact, actually, it's also varied across jurisdiction as well. Some countries have a very different perspective of it. Even in my pilot, like when I was interviewing, say, one of the fellow students, she was like saying in Vietnam, they're actually just abolishing all online programs, and the doctoral program, in the public sector by government, it's not even recognized. But the private sector, is, she still found great value in it. So it was quite interesting. So what I want to do is I am aiming to do up to 20 interviews, and I want to get that cross sectional, that microcosm snapshot of what is the kind of lived experience and the perceptions, the adoption, the kind of norms, the lived understanding of different players across the board. So there's only been accepted across sectors and institutions, and there's patchy evidence for its organization impact, right? So I'm looking at the purpose, how the stakeholders. So looking at the different categories of stakeholders. One is the candidates and the alumni. So the students either existing or within the programs, which is interesting because they'd be kind of hot in it, and those alumni who through the program. And those, we'll say, institutions who deliver the programs, and including them their if I can, some awarding bodies, and then employers, different types of employers, just a kind of cross section of employers. So identify what helps, and what blocks the adoption of such programs. And then look at, say, practical advice for students, universities, and employers. So the introduction research questions. So the one is, so question one, what's the perception of values and adoption practices of practice-based doctorates, focusing on the DBA and EdD. How do institutions position themselves to and develop such programs? Are institutions really getting themselves to really understand, or the market, and to seeing the value in it? And so what are the barriers to the wider adoption, recognition and adoption, both by industry, both by, say, institutions and industry and awarding bodies, and strategies to improve understanding and integration, and that includes students as well, and how the students can be maybe a linchpin for that kind of, or the boundary spanner to help bridge between the industry and practice. So I'm hoping, my aim is to develop some shared language for the value and impact, what are the conditions that support the adoption and mitigate the barriers, and what kind of practical recommendations I can give for program design and partnership with industry. Um, so if we look at, say, the doctorate types and knowledge mode, the PhD is academic, and as we know, and it's theory based and very, very much like academic institution driven. Professional doctorates are aimed at solving real world problems. It's a lot more applied, but both meet the doctoral standards. So mode one is the university kind of discipline approach, and mode two is the more problem-centered, co-produced with organization. Now I know that either can be live a bit in both, but mode one is the PhD is more than that, and the D and DBA fit more on the second, as the other emergent practice-based doctors. Um, the guiding principles are um, we'll say there's the certain lens I'm looking at what's transformational learning theory and community practice. So how, and I'm very much into the transformation of the individual during as they go through these programs, and how they transform by doing such a program, they transform themselves. How communities practice that, the various community practice can within, say, the those who are doing the doctorates programs, those who've been through it, the alumni, how they develop community practice. And I can see small little cottage industry developing between the students, but we're doing business together, which they are because they've already been through the program. And then the community practice from the awarding, sorry, not the awarding, but the institutions, can they work with other institutions? And I think there's a real growth for that community practice. Both have the doctrinateness as a shared standard. They both absolutely have a certain rigor, understanding, sorry, credibility, transferability, all the doctrinateness that is needed in both. It might have a different lens and focus, PhD as opposed to the DBA and EdD, but they have a doctrinous level. And then how can the candidates access the boundary spanners between the campus and workplace? And I can see that myself. The candidates be true now. They really are, they can set a blaze and start a fire in the organizations and back into the institutions as well. Because I think if we can really ignite the candidates, that can help drive more interest from, say, the institutions and drive more adoption and sponsorship by by the industry. So scope and the limitations. So it's focused on just the DBA and EdD. I didn't. There was several types of practice-based doctors, but I just want to focus on them too for the study, and it's how to perceive positions and adopt this across sectors. So what I'm doing is I'm not going to be able to do a quality study to cover everything. I'll be just going from, we'll say, just 15 to 20 interviews. And I'm just on the video call here, Blind. So participants will include, as said, in university employers, alumni, candidates, and policy stakeholders, and geographical reach. I will be looking at English speaking context, and I'll be using a combination of purposeful and snowball samples. Well, when I do an outreach to link with LinkedIn and with email, targeted email, then I think what I'll do is I'll ask each of the interviewees, do they know somebody that would be a good fit? Now, it won't go, if they, most of them will, I find in general, they will say I could recommend somebody. And then when I think about it, and as I'm going through this, looking for my theoretical saturation, I will come back and then continuously go till I feel I'm reaching that theoretical saturation, because I find that combination of purposeful and snowball, that triangulation approach would be very beneficial here. Exclusions, I'm not going to be doing any of the wider practice-based doctorates or clinical doctorates. It's I'm just looking for two that's hopefully, like, looking at it representing the whole, and purpose limits and priorities and qualitative depth over the very much quantitative understanding, or it's a depth over breadth. And so significance, it is great. Significance at universities, I think it will provide a better positioning for such a study, and how and to help strengthen standards. That's what I'm hoping out of this, and it will help me not just in my initial study, but it'll help me ongoing, like even further papers from this to inform institutions. And actually on my own, where I'm a supervisor, co-supervisor, and I'm thinking as well even developing program that might be a specific program, even within the Swiss School of Business Research, which is very much targeted, I think, on development of a program like I'm calling it a Pro.D, that's like developing, and it's initially private sector maybe recognized, but it's it's focused on the very specific needs of specific industries. Now, like I don't know yet. I'm just it's certain things, but at least even it'll help me inform the DBA and ID. Employers, like you'll have more interest in employers to sponsor candidates, when they see the clear beneficial of how it's helping the organizations in innovation and transformation. And for the candidates, they can see there's a real career progression in this and how they can be ignited and transformed and by doing such a program. And then policy accreditation, significance. It helps how we can maybe build better parties seen, what maybe nudge towards that particular one. So I'm not going to go into we'll say the method, just a quick snapshot. It's qualitative, interpretative, and interpretive. I was going to use grounded theory, but I think there's no need. Sorry, that should be 15 to 20 interviews, not 12. But I am using, because I'm grounded theory expert, I'll be using aspects of grounded theory in reflexive thematic analysis, in that. But I don't need to develop a new theory, because really I'm looking for those patterns and recognitions that are there than creating a new theory. I'm just looking at that, what are the patterns and emerging the lived experience of those particular participants. So I said we'll be using a combination of purposive and sampling, as I said, in the approach to get the best saturation. And then the next chapter is literature map and gaps, and then finally it's chapter methods. So I'm not going to the lit review. What I found that there was a big history. Initially, it was, and I'm going to scan this really quickly. And I was only starting to update with more modern references here, but then I did a big literature span over all different areas in education, business, health, um, and I looked at I looked at various, it's for back from 30 years, did structural research across major databases and publications with citation publishing empirical work prioritized in 2015 25 and seminal seminal theory included. And I did it in a peer review source of the core with some great sources used to help the context. And um, the PhD was the dominant one initially, and then the EdD and DBA emerged very early on actually, and then lost its basically declined in its use, and then it was recently emerged again. But it's disparate. It's not consistent in its how it's been adopted, and patchy implication for its recognition. Um, Mode 1 and Mode 2, as said, is the PhD is more Mode 1. Mode 2 for applied knowledge is more Mode 2, with the Mode 1 be more the kind of academic discipline, the institutional approach, and the Mode 2 is the more kind of applied problem-centered co-produced context. Now, so transformational learning theory, I think that's important considering that what we discussed, how the individual themselves transform. And I discussed community practice. I don't go through it again. Doctorateness we discussed as well. And I'll be discussing this in more detail while I'll be obviously in a real presentation. PhD and professional doctorates, yeah. There is the two, but then the hybrid between the two, and particularly this co-supervision with industry, I find the research has shown is very good. What I've done is the kind of theoretical frameworks that I use to help me look at the lens of this Mode 1, Mode 2, transformation theory, communities of practice, doctorateness, and together they help me to explain the value, legitimate impact, and are constructed in practice focused doctors, connecting individuals, we'll say, with this transformation and community engagement, institutional standards, outcomes at organization sector levels. Examples include possible improvement, service quality gains, and innovation. But this is the outcomes, the impacts have been patchy and it's uneven, and the literature is saying that program design and assessment, there's been some ways work integrated projects for reflected portfolios common. Post-supervision with employers is common, and equivalent is shown through explicit criteria, evidence, doctrines, um, adoption patterns and barriers. Um, so there has been some adoption patterns in different across different industries, and explain that in literature. It's education is steady growing, health and public service is patchy, and they face time and recognition issues, and really employer understanding is a big thing towards it. Recognition and legitimacy. So it's really disparity is seen when standards and outcomes are communicated clearly. That's really it's about communication that it's the same. But often people don't see it like that. Even institutions don't see it like that. Um, External benchmarkers and examples have built employer confidence. So you need to really show those examples, and messaging is very important to rigor, visibility, and value outcome. So measurement and evidence. So I'm just going to skip because I don't want to bombard you with all that. The synthesis. I want to go now to the methodology. So it's a qualitative and interpretative. It's a reflective analysis to identify pattern meanings. So I'm a grounded theory expert, and I've done a lot of my studies in grounded theory. But I think, as we discussed, RTA is reflexive thematic analysis. But I am using aspects of grounded theory in this. Um, so meanings of context is specific. Aim is analytical insights and the lived experience and the rich, thick experience from the user's practitioner academic identity handled reflexively. So the project discusses purpose sampling 15 to 20 participants drawn from universities, industry, alumni, and policy organization. Rationale is this kind of microcosm of the global kind of macrocosm. Look, I know it might seem that I'm trying to do big, broad, but it's that rich understanding within those interviews, that 15 to 20 interviews. And I know when I'm close to 15, how many more do I need to get, but I think 20, I've definitely reached saturation on this. I can't see I need any more than 20. Recruitment, well, I'll be doing LinkedIn and say like outreach, the particular target folks, outreach direct email using consent information seat like in the IRB as discussed. So the interviews will be semi-structured format with around 12 core questions exploring perceptions, adoptions, and proposition. Be delivered through MS Teams. 40 recorded duration, 40 to about 60 minutes, allowing conversation depth and inflection. Data handling, interviews transcribed verbatim and anonymized using role-based identifiers, and the storage of encrypted files stored securely and password protected drive following Edwards University data retention. So then the way I do it is I familiarize myself. As we discussed, I like manual, like coding. I would just like immerse myself in at the end of the interview, do my journaling, reflective journaling, feel what is coming emerging from that, start actually taking quotes, put them into say initial codes, develop them then into start developing themes, then I would be using say constant comparisons as I'm doing as I'm going through each interview, and every couple of interviews I will go back and I will look at the constant comparison and seeing how the codes and themes are a reflection. So I'll be using then a combination of Word and Excel. I'll put then the from the Word my reflection journey and notes the back into Excel, and then that's about full that mapping that process through, and then following a consistent pattern like that. So Sean then will see each after each interview and coding session, and decision log of when I merge teams or split teams, quality, coherence, resonance, transparency, usefulness, and then auto trade, and thick description for transferability. And so I'm going to go to this one here, that methods, trustworthiness, quality, comfortability. I How I do that is maintain an auto trade of coding members and themes, decision to show findings stem from data and bias, credibility, use member checking for factual accuracy and peer review dissents, check clarity, coherence, and dependability. I'll be using constant comparison with the interviews to ensure consistency in interpretation. The transferability would be used to scripts in the context and participant backgrounds, so readers can judge how it fits their own setting. Reflexivity, and so keep memos and position notes. So I'll always reflect on myself, and reflective and reflexive, that will change as my own perceptions as of the interpretation, what the constructed meanings from the my participants, and I'll be constantly reflecting that triangulation. So not full mixed method triangulation, but conception in terms of comparing perspectives across stakeholder groups, university alumni, instrumental findings. So ethics, I would say, identify study risks and mitigate steps, as in the IRB. Informed consent, the right to withdraw, protect confidentiality and opportunity, role-based identifiers, store data securely with encryption, and restrict specify retention period and the deletion period of study. And then methodological limits. There'll be English language focus, so won't cover all different languages. There'll be obviously I've only kind of, you can only go so far with your how you're getting your volunteers, and obviously you can always get the people that you want to get. So be certain the kind of bias to who's available, and who would actually is going to actually refer you on the snowball. And so there's certain with quality small studies like that, you do have, it's the sample bias as well, a sample skew. But I think you mitigate that by your rich, by how you're you're constantly reflecting, are you getting the right theoretical sampling, following the approaches of the reflective thematic analysis, even in your recruiting. The depth over breadth, using tick description and design, cost comparison, transferability, not generalizability. So in time-bounded snapshot, so I'll be doing it within a cross-sectional in time, while while organizations may be changing, so there's limitations to that, but it's still, the study is very important. So that's the end of my presentation. And I think, as I say, that I'm spent next week redrafting everything that I've done, and I'll be probably making further edits to it again. But I will at least a week. I'm going to have an update. So I wasn't that happy with the current version of the three chapters, but I was going to say to you, I hope you got enough from that. And then next week I can send you on the um next week and send you on the updated three chapters.